The show's going to be a little different this season.
We are referring to this as game of the game. Well, the game is that there's a hat. In that hat, there are prompts. We do not know what these prompts say.
You and we both don't know what we're going to be talking about next episode. Cookie Pocket, the game of the game.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.
The game of the game. You know what? I'm going to continue hacking into these national and international secrets that I know are going on.
Hacking into the secrets.
Yes.
Oh, God.
Despite the fact that none of my computers are ever going to be turned on, and they're all clearly from about 2006.
And there's a lot of things that look like they're from 2006 in this. For what film, you may ask?
Yeah.
We may
sorry.
ask.
Fateful Findings, alas.
There we go.
I was given the dumpster fire of a prompt from Zach, which required me to choose a Neil Breen film. And I've been close to mulliganing a few times. This was the closest. And I even thought Mitchell was almost pulling for me to do that this time. But, you know, pride will be the death of me. So I did not mulligan.
Pride and the fact that you couldn't think of a movie on the spot. Let's not forget that.
Yes. Pride and
didn't even know who Neil
perfectionism.
Breen was.
Gosh. Oh, God. So Zach and I watched this, I want to say like 2 weeks ago now. We had to reschedule this recording.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think some of my ire has cooled a little bit, but this was a dreadful viewing experience, especially alone in my apartment. I felt like a crazy person. And I guess I want to open by subjecting Zach to what Zach has occasionally hilariously subjected Mitchell to for a particularly strange film. So, Zach, what is this film about and what happens in this film?
Okay. So I'm glad you asked, Christian, because I think ultimately, if you can parse Neil Breen's confused middle-aged mind, well, a little older than middle-aged, this is a fairly simple movie that I think is about, at its core, I think what Neil Breen is trying to make a movie is about a man who experiences a near-death event and reevaluates his life. I think that was probably the seed of the idea for him, or maybe he knew a friend who was in some kind of a car accident. But let's just talk the nuts and bolts of what happens in this movie. I'll see you guys in 25 minutes. So the movie essentially begins with Neil Breen as a child, whose name Dylan. His name is Dylan. Dylan and his best friend, a girl whose name I also can't remember. Leah. There we go. This is why we work so well as a team.
It's in my noggin because I just saw it.
Dylan and Leah are playing in the woods together when they happen upon a mushroom. This is a mysterious wood where fanciful things happen. The skull of a goat watches them for some reason. They find a mushroom. The mushroom turns into a bag with a little box in it. Inside the box is a jewel, which Dylan keeps. Leah takes some of the jewels to make a bracelet, and then she makes a note in her journal to remember that today was a magical day. And then the bag turns back into a mushroom. Actually, after they open the mushroom bag, though, there's some kind of a smoky breeze that blows by, and there's an ominous free-to-use sound effect that happens. Then Leah moves away. And we learn that this was, in fact, all 30 years in the past or so, despite the fact that everybody is driving around 2015 vehicles and clearly lives in a 2015 suburb of Las Vegas at the time. Anyway, 30 years in the future, after Dylan and Leah said goodbye because she moved away, Dylan has aged 50 years to be played by our writer, director, producer, financier, caterer, and pretty much everything else on this movie, Mr. Neil Breen. He of Las Vegas fame. Neil Breen was an architect. That's how he made his money. And then when he got to a certain age, he decided he wanted to use his money to pursue his true passion of filmmaking. On paper, totally fine with that. You do what you want with your own money. If you want to pursue filmmaking, that's okay. Maybe don't do it this way, though. Anyway, Neil Breen is now a man who... He's now a man who leaves work one day, and he's talking on the phone with his Russian mail-order bride wife, who can't act very well. Although, of course, I should say that she's talking to him. Even though she acts as if he's talking to her, he's not actually saying anything. He decides to cross the road at the same time as a bunch of other people who may or may not be there. It's hard to evaluate given the shots that Neil Breen has collected. And he's hit by a Rolls Royce. A woman in a very short skirt and very high heels gets out of the Rolls Royce, where Neil Breen has bled all over a specific part of the front grate and is lying on the ground. And she does something. And then a man in suit pants arrives and his legs disappear. Neil Breen is picked up by an ambulance and taken to a hospital, which is inside.
She gives him the rock.
Oh, does she pick up the rock? Or does she give him the rock?
I thought she was giving him the rock.
Oh, okay.
And then that's what heals him later.
Okay, this is why we work together so well as a team.
Zach.
Anyway, Neil Breen is taken to a hospital, which is inside of a suburban house in Las Vegas. His hospital room is clearly just a bedroom that has carpet. Neil Breen is injured in the hospital. His wife and his friend Jim, who is played by the least bad actor in the movie, come to visit him. And the doctor, who has no bedside manner at all, essentially says that he's dreadfully injured, he's not doing very well, and he has a lot of other patients to deal with, so we'll see what happens. Then the man in the suit pants comes back and disappears again. Neil Breen is healed by the magical stone, which was given to him by the woman in the miniskirt, and then he goes home in his hospital Johnny and facial bandages, where he takes a shower without taking off his bandages, and he and his Russian mail-order bride have a very awkward sex scene in which we kind of see his sack. Then there's a lot of stuff with their awkward relationship with their friends Jim and Jim's wife, who is played by the worst actor in the movie, who also happens to have the largest breasts. I think that might be a thing that Neil Breen happens to look for when casting female actors. Jim is an alcoholic who spends most of his time polishing the side mirror of his Ferrari in his garage. And their daughter is enamored with Neil Breen for some reason. The core narrative of the movie is that Neil Breen is a very successful author. Well, an author who wrote one successful book and is working on his second book, but he's having difficulty. And he also is feeling cynical of the whole exercise because he has a degree in computer science and he's not using it all to write these hardcover editions of probably a Dickens novel that they picked up at Barnes & Noble in bulk that he could sign and throw around along with his 2006 Lenovo laptops. While he's working on this book, Neil Breen is consulting two different therapists, one of whom's office is too big and the other of whom's office is the size of the corner of a room. These, I think, are meant to be sort of angel and devil parallels on his shoulder. The first therapist is over-medicating him and is focused on getting him to finish that book for the profit of them, the people who have employed him and are interested in him writing another book. Meanwhile, his other therapist, who he sits on a folding chair with in the corner, is more interested about him pursuing his inner self, and pursuing the national and international secrets which he has been hacking into, which he announces to us about as abruptly as I just announced it to you. What else happens? His Russian mail-order bride has a pill addiction, to the extent that she will reach into the toilet to grab Neil Breen's pills after he chucks them in there when he decides just that he doesn't need his pills anymore. There is a pool party where Jim and Jim's wife and Jim's daughter and Neil Breen and his mail-order bride are all beside the pool together, even though the sound effects would imply they're at a circus or a crowded amusement park. But they're standing around the pool together, making hot dogs on a grill that isn't lit. Jim makes a pass at, or I should say, the bottom half of Jim makes a pass at the bottom half of Neil Breen's mail-order bride, and she rebukes him. And also, Leah shows up because Leah worked at the hospital when Neil Breen was incapacitated. It doesn't seem like anybody invited her to this very small party, so I don't know why she's there, but she shows up and she drops the same 30-page journal that she was carrying when she was 10 out of her pocket to the exact page where she declared that it was a magical day. And based on this and this alone, Neil Breen recognizes that this woman that he knew 20, 30 years ago, that he is somehow 20 or 30 years older than, is the girl that he grew up with and was his best friend. Then, Neil Breen's wife realizes that she has, this might be getting a little out of order. The back half of this movie is intense.
You're going into a lot more detail than I thought you would.
It's important to tell our listeners the extent of this film's dense and complicated plot. Neil Breen's wife, I believe, is a parallel to Judas because she is selling him out to his devil therapist, we learn. His devil therapist with sleeves that are too long. They poke out of the end of his suit. And she sells him out in exchange for pills, and then eventually commits suicide using those pills. Neil Breen is upset for a moment, but this also means that he can start a relationship with Leah again, so he's really not that upset. Jim is shot by his wife during a drunken argument. Neil Breen comes over and is mildly disappointed. Jim's daughter swims topless in Neil Breen's pool, and then takes a bubble bath. And Neil Breen, because he's such a nice, honorable guy, tells her she can't do that anymore. She's got to go home. And she can never come back unless she calls first. Leah is kidnapped by somebody. Neil Breen rescues her. And then at the end of the movie, Neil Breen releases all of the information he's been hacking into through the entire runtime. He releases the national and international secrets. He outs everyone. He outs our senator. He outs the president of the bank. He outs the head of a major pharmaceutical organization. And all of these people over the same superimposed image of a generic Capitol building commit suicide in increasingly comedic ways. An assassin is sent to shoot Neil Breen, but Neil Breen is so blessed and godly. He is such a holy man that the bullet somehow bends back and shoots this assassin who is hiding in the bushes next to the park in the back. And then the movie ends with the windy graphic going back to the tree mushroom. So I think it's implied that Neil Breen was given this godly ability, this godly insight in order to do this thing. God smiled upon him and said, "You, Neil Breen, must release this information to kill 5 people in 2015. And then after he served his purpose, God's holy wind goes back into a mushroom in the woods in Nevada. And that is the end of Fateful Findings. as best as I can describe it.
Wow, Zach.
Yay!
Wow.
What'd you think, Zach? What'd you think?
I didn't like this movie. Now I knew I wasn't gonna like this movie, but here's I think it's also, Christian, you had some awareness of Neil Breen, and Mitchell, you said you had no idea who Neil Breen was, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I've talked to him. He didn't talk back to me.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, yeah. Mitchell emailed Neil Breen to see if he would appear on our podcast, and I guess he didn't reply.
Maybe he has a big inbox.
Yeah, he's got a.
It was less than a month ago.
He's got a very, he gets tons of AOL messages. His
Twisted Pair at AOL.com.
His Nokia is ringing off the hook. But okay, I wanted to talk about Neil Breen on the show because I think Neil Breen is, like it or not, he's one of the most hotly discussed directorial voices of our time within a certain circle. Neil Breen is a movie YouTube sensation. Every movie channel that reviews movies talks about bad movies and good movies of any kind. They've talked about at least one Neil Breen movie for comedic value. And his career has, to an extent, kind of been spurred on by that memery. He's continued to make movies of this quality and worse, and seems to be blissfully unaware of the fact that everybody's laughing at him. But he's continued to ride the wave. I mean, he's made something like 8 movies now. He's gotten picked up and shown at like actual film festivals because there's enough interest in these movies that they'll be accepted and put on, like, you know, the evening crowd pleaser circuit or something like that. And people know what to expect from Neil Breen. People are going to these movies expecting a movie like this. I don't think anybody's being fooled. And Neil Breen seems to like what he's making, but he's an intriguing character. There's a channel I follow called Weird Movies with Mark that once said, if Tommy Wiseau is the Orson Welles of bad movies, then Neil Breen is the David Lynch of bad movies. And I think that's a comparison that kind of holds up. And I said this when we talked about The Room too, which we talked about that on Week in Review however many years ago when we watched it. But I said that even though The Room is bad, I think that watching that movie, I at least have to relent that Tommy Wiseau is some kind of an artist, because art is, I think, an creative expression of yourself and your own beliefs and experiences and your view of the world. And The Room is 100% that. Tommy Wiseau had bled all over the script of The Room, and that is what is on the screen. And I think to the same extent, you can say that this movie, Fateful Findings, it's very much Neil Breen's art. This is an expression of how he sees the world, how he sees the elite, how he sees the proletariat, who are, although he probably wouldn't use the word proletariat, who are being pushed and shoved and manipulated by these people with all the money and all the power. I mean, to an extent, that's what all of his movies are. All of his movies are him sleeping with progressively younger than him women with very large breasts, while he, shames the corporate and capitalist elite. I mean, this is, a man expressing his beliefs through digital cinema. It's just not good. and Neil Breen doesn't, have any understanding of how a movie should be shot or put together. Even if he did, this wouldn't be good because the script is nonsensical and they get worse. He has worse later movies, but I did think that we at least needed to touch on Neil Breen because we're 6 years in, we'd never even talked about him. And he is, I think, like it or not, a present figure in the world of cinema today.
We also haven't talked about Alfred Hitchcock, so I see where our priorities lie on the show.
Yeah. So Neil, if you're watching, you beat old Alfred to the podcast.
That's crazy.
Wow.
I I do think this is interesting coming off of Aggro Drift because it really shows like the. First of all, I think Aggro Drift is a better film.
Oh, 100%.
In almost every
Yes.
way, which is very interesting to say. But I do think like coming off of it, you definitely can see the range of how poor films are, and a lot of it isn't just about technique necessarily. It's also about, like you were saying, Zach, like your expression of your passion and how you see the world. And I mean, it's totally believable, like the way that he sees the world.
Mhm.
Like if somebody was describing like the events of the film to you as like a life experience or as like an opinion or something, like that's not unbelievable, like to hear somebody talk like that at all.
Yeah, I might avoid them at Thanksgiving, but I believe I could meet this person.
Yeah. I mean, drugs involved or not, it makes sense. And it definitely, the reason I mentioned like early YouTube in my review is because I used to watch a lot of early YouTube, particularly Smosh when it came out. And those Smosh skits were, I mean, they weren't anything special, obviously, in terms like from a technical standpoint. But they were very much formatted as skits. They wrote actual scripts for them. Eventually they had a production team and everything, but when it was just, the two guys, it was, that was just all it was. And like they'd have sound effects in there, and it's filmed the same way. There's like basically no editing or post-processing, other than just cutting, from scene to scene. And but it would be like 10 minutes, 15 minutes long max. And they're really funny. And that was it, and that's kind of like the beauty of skits. But I mean, in this case, it was literally just, he's just filming things and people are talking after they read the script. And that's it. And there's nothing else to it. And I was thinking about giving this 1 star. I think this is the first time where, at least based off of our rating scheme, because Zach is on his high, cannot cut the star in half horse.
I just don't like doing it.
But this is the lowest. I think this is the only time where all of us were at our like lowest rating. And I definitely thought about giving this 1 star just because I learned a lot about him watching the film. And I thought that was interesting. But the film is of such poor quality in every possible facet that I could not bring myself to give him credit for just doing what he thinks, because anybody can do that. There isn't anything particularly unique about that perspective necessarily. He just has the right amount of money, I guess, even though, I don't remember what the budget was, but I mean, it was too much. It was anything more than 0. It was too much.
He really doesn't have the right amount of money, but he does he to make a movie, but you know, he has enough money to hire a couple of actors to come over to his house and to buy a digital video camera. I would bet this was made for a similar amount of money as The Briefcase, a season 1 classic.
Yeah. And I watched a couple of his interviews, and he said that he netted positive on this, which is probably believable. Yeah. And thinking back on it. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I would say, I think the biggest contention really is like whether or not it really is like a cult, like a deserving of a cult following, or if it's actually like so bad it's good. And I just think there's not really enough substance, but there are hilarious moments, like absolutely ridiculous, just perfectly comedically timed scenes, perfectly timed. And Jim is like a good chunk of that as well. And there's no way I have to, for Christian, I mean, when Christian, Christian thinks that he has self-awareness, and I was like, okay,
whoa,
for the most part,
no,
Neil Breen, you think Neil Breen has self-awareness, right? But I was like, I feel like he's really taking this seriously. But when Jim knocks over the corn and the cobs,
And then the motion he makes with his arms, where he kind of just goes. And why?
And the dinner. You didn't mention the dinner.
Oh, I
Zach.
forgot the
the
dinner
lunch or whatever the hell
where they
that
have
was.
beer, champagne, and slices of Wonder Bread, and everything else is in the oven. It's not done yet.
Yeah, how was school? I'm doing a project on elephants in Africa. And then it cuts to him smiling.
Can I have some more wine, please? This touches on, I think, one of the, and if we start talking about weaknesses in Neil Breen's filmmaking technique, we'll be here all day.
Yeah.
But I think a particular weakness in the way that he shoots a scene is that he doesn't, every scene of conversation in a Neil Breen movie, you start in a wide and then you cut into close-ups. And every close-up, it's apparent that Neil Breen pointed the camera at an actor and said, okay, say your line. And then he pointed the camera at the next actor and said, okay, say your line. And then he pointed it back and said, okay, say your next line. And so you end up with this choppy nightmare of like blank space and nobody seeming to talk to anybody, and the eye lines are all off. And what you would do on a real film set is point the camera at one actor and say, okay, we're going to run through your side of the dialogue, and everybody else is going to react to your dialogue and talk off of you, and then we'll film their stuff later. And then at least you get a continuous take of one person. And the fact that Neil doesn't know this boggles me, because he continues to do this stuff in his later movies. And you would think, A, he would learn it doesn't look good or sound good or edit well. And B, he made his first movie with a crew. His first movie, Double Down, was shot on film with actual money by an actual crew with gear. And it's not a good movie because he made it. But, you know, he at least had a crew there to understand the technical side. And so he must have done these things. He must have been the one on camera saying one whole side of his dialogue. And like, did he forget? Did he assume that was unnecessary? Did he think you don't need to do that on digital because you don't have to worry about wasting film? It boggles me that a man can make all of these mistakes, that a man could have such a lack of awareness to make all these mistakes. Because I don't think this is a prank. I guess that's the next question. Is he self-aware, and is this like a joke, or is this genuine? I think it's genuine, but I don't think anybody could play the straight face well enough to pull this off for this long. But I don't know.
It's hard to say. I think while watching, I got so frustrated to the point where I was like, oh, he's got to know. This is like so beyond the pale. And like you guys said, with The Room as a comparison point, I mean, I feel like at least the supporting actors in The Room are competent. Yeah. And the cinematography is a thing that exists.
Yeah.
And here, I found myself kind of glad that I chose Fateful Findings as opposed to whatever his newest film is. I think he made one as recent as 2023.
Yeah, there's one that's not even out yet. It comes out later this year.
Yeah, go figure. I feel like after, there has to be a difference in the attitudes of the people working on his films, at least post Fateful Findings. I think his supporting actors must know, oh, this is a Neil Breen movie, and he's got this cult following where the movies are so bad they're good, and people watch them because they're this type of thing. So I think to defend in some aspect the validity of watching Fateful Findings, at least in a comic context, I think it is interesting to see these other like very earnest and also bad supporting actors versus what I suspect might be people giving intentional anti-performances in his more recent films. I will still say though that I think Neil Breen is by far the worst actor in this film, even worse than Jim's wife. I think Jim's wife is like a very like over the top, thinks she's like doing really dramatic stuff, but it just comes off as like totally fake and false. And Neil Breen talks like a robot. Yes. And in a monotone and often like has an uncanny lack of a facial expression.
Yeah.
And in the few instances where he is smiling, usually when he's touching one of his female co-stars, it's just incredibly unnerving.
It's like a mask.
Yes. And though we've laughed quite a bit to this point describing it and talking about it, the viewing experience alone was not that for me. I laughed very loudly when Neil got hit by the car. And from there, it was pretty much nothing. I might have had like another laugh of desperation. But
you didn't laugh at the mass suicide? That sounds terrible out of context. But
I think like the second or third one did get me at the end.
I think those are all so funny. The guy who gets in his car with running and then takes pills, but he doesn't like the way he takes them. It's like he's like biting into an apple or something. Like it's like such a weird choice.
And then he like softly falls onto his wheel. And Neil Breen, that is irritating. The fact that he fell like on the table and he like very clearly caught himself before hitting the table while he's like trying to like tremble with the coffee as hard as he can.
The 2-minute
and
scene.
He's like moaning uncomfortably. And then he spills it and is laying in it and like, dang, he must be like, I'm so committed to this role right now. Like this is the role of the century for me.
There's so many scenes in that office that I think are just great indicators of like him having no idea of like pace or tone or when to get a second take. The bit where he's eating a plate of spinach and nothing but spinach while he works on his book, and then he puts the plate of spinach. Leah comes in because they're living together now because luckily his wife died, and she sits down across from him, and he puts his plate of spinach on some manila folders, and then it falls off, and they laugh. And then they have a conversation about data or whatever.
But they don't laugh. Everyone's thinking, oh, they like look at each other and laugh. No. You are not you are not the target audience for this. You don't understand his style. You don't understand his intent. Okay. They did not laugh.
Yeah.
One of them laughed.
Yes.
And then it cuts. And then the other one smiles, laughs a little bit. And then it cuts, and then the other one laughs, and then it cuts, and then the other one laughs.
And all of these shots are like 3 seconds long, which doesn't sound like much, but a second is a lot of time in a movie. You don't realize how long a second is until you've looked at a plate of spinach for 2 seconds before it finally falls off a stack of manila folders. And then there's the scene where he and his wife are like, you know, oh, we're in denial about our relationship, but let's have some frisky lovemaking in the corner of your study, and they're like tearing at each other's clothes, but they didn't like make tears in the clothes they would tear easily, so they're just like getting really stretched out in this really like awkward way, which is so uncomfortable to watch. And anyone who even qualifies as a director, anybody who had like a vision and was like, hey, I wanted that shot to look like this, it doesn't look like that, would say either A, let's do another take, or B, maybe I don't put this in the movie. But he didn't say either of those things.
How many shots do you think are like the first or second take? Because I would almost wonder like if he had a plan and was like using like the train, like just full steam ahead method, and just thinking, okay, like just do the scene, like, yeah, that looked like what I wanted it to be. Let's keep going. Because I feel like it must have been within a few takes each time.
Yeah, this is where I wish because Neil Breen released a couple of years ago. I say a couple, might have been like 5 or 6 at this point. He released I think he calls it like a 5-film retrospective, which he advertised it as if it was like him giving a masterclass on how he made his movies. And it's like a 5-hour thing where he's sitting on his couch and he laboriously talks about his movies and like the props that he made and stuff like that. And I wish I had actually sat down and like watched that in full, because I do wonder about his process, because watching this, it feels like he shot this with the discipline that you would shoot like a student U.S. history project in high school, where you have a friend who has a camera named Zach, and you all show up in the park and then you have a vague idea of what you want to happen, so you kind of just put the camera down in places until you've collected enough footage, and then you go home and your friend who has iMovie cuts it together. Like, look at that boy go.
Zach just described exactly what Christian and I did. We went to a park and put the camera down. Now, we had a script, and it was good. That was better than this.
And Mitchell 100%. Stayed up all night, literally, to edit it.
I stayed up all night. All night. And I used Sony Vegas, not iMovie.
Neil Breen stayed up all night editing Fateful Findings.
To be fair, we had plane noises in ours. We had plane noises.
Yeah, that's tricky.
But it worked
perfectly. He has plane noises in this movie too.
We talked about planes.
There's plane noises in so many.
Crap.
He must live in a flight path or something, because there's so many scenes in his house where you can hear in the background, like muffled. It doesn't overwhelm the actors, but it's enough that like you can tell he didn't have a sound recordist. It's just like the in-camera audio off of his camcorder or whatever, because anybody who records sound at all would go, hold for plane. Okay, we're clear. And the fact that nobody was there to do that is it's astounding.
Yeah. I'm getting to the Paul Blart 2 point of the conversation where I just feel like we're giving this movie way too much airtime. we're examining it on such a level. Do you guys think the other actors excuse me, do you think the other actors were aware of the schlockiness of this, or do you think they're all giving their sincere best?
I don't think you can be in this movie and not be aware that it's a piece of garbage. And I think you especially see that from the women in the film. I think Jim's daughter, there's a part in the movie where, again, does Neil Breen not look at his footage or something? There's a bit where he's scolding her. He's like, you've got to stop. You can't take a bath in my shower and swim in my pool any longer. And she looks directly into the camera with this like, oh my God, expression.
Yeah.
Every like scene with his wife, the Russian actress, she also has this real vibe of like, oh my God, when is lunch? The actress who plays Leah has this real sort of like grin and bear it vibe. Yeah. I think they're all aware, like, okay. But Neil Breen, to his credit, has said in multiple interviews that he's very, very serious about like running his film sets professionally. Everybody gets paid like a union rate. Nobody's asked to stay like ridiculous hours overtime. So I imagine it is a thing where, like, apparently he hires his actors on Craigslist, but I imagine it is a thing where like people are like, well, I'm getting paid $7.50 for the day, so okay, like we'll do it. You know, I get to go home at 5 or whatever. I get to, listen to that bland accordion record I've had planned all week or whatever. The only one who seems to be getting anything out of it is Jim. I think the actor who plays Jim might kind of be having fun and isn't terrible in it. And maybe his better attitude comes from the fact that he doesn't have to expose his bare breast to Neil Breen. Like he's not a fantastic actor, but like if I saw him in like a commercial or something, I'd be like, okay, I believe that's a man at a barbecue.
Yeah, well said.
Hold on, I'm about to find the podcast. Amy is Jim's wife.
Oh,
the actress did an interview December of last year.
Oh, this is kind of unheard of. A lot of actors from Neil Breen movies don't give interviews.
Victoria Viveros.
This is one. People have speculated in the past that he might have his actors sign like ironclad NDAs, and that might be a reason that like people don't. Because you'd expect there to be tons of interviews and talks at film festivals. What was it like to work with Neil? Well, Neil is such a funny guy, but you can't really find clips like that.
No, it was 2024. Never mind.
Okay,
but that's still
interesting.
Insanely recent.
Yeah.
Is there any transcript for this? Anyway, while I'm pulling this up, Yeah, I think this was not that frustrating for me to watch. I do want to say that. This was not that annoying for me. And I think the reason why is because the scale in which like it's a small movie that he funded, like you have to feel bad for him, obviously. You have to pity him and his, even if his ignorance is willful, you have to pity him in that he's really trying and he appears to really take this seriously and really have like a sincere passion for it. And honestly, like because his acting is so bad the whole time, you can tell most of his emotion was in the last speech that he gives.
Yeah.
And the speech is so meaningless and does not disclose anything.
Yeah.
But it's like his monologue, you know, it's like the climax basically. And you can tell he like actually believes what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like he actually is invested in that. You can very clearly tell, like any interview or anything, that this is like his whole thing. You know, he believes in conspiracies and believes in, the government and being in control of everything and all that stuff. Which like most people believe now, obviously, but regardless, it's interesting that he clearly built this around his own worldview. And I feel like with other films with hundreds of millions of dollars, there is less passion in it. Like 100%. And that is really sad. That is like a really depressing like conclusion.
Yeah.
But those films that, that there's a lot of money going into and there's not a lot of passion seemingly, that is irritating. That is frustrating. That is something I do not enjoy watching at all. And I will never laugh at them.
Yeah, I guess it's a question of what do you think Neil Breen wants to get out of making movies? And that could be a hypothetical question. But like is Neil Breen making movies because he wants to make great cinematic art? Does Neil Breen want to make movies that people are going to feature on one perfect shot and put in like their pitch decks for movies? Oh, I really want to recreate this beautiful shot from Fateful Findings for this scene in my Batman movie or whatever. I get the impression that for Neil, it's less about the quality of the filmmaking and more about getting his ideas out there. Part of me last week was like, what if Mitchell is just gonna drop like podcast napalm on us, and Neil Breen actually agreed to appear in this Discord chat, and Christian and I aren't gonna know until he's here. I was like, what would I even say to this man? I would
totally do that.
And
I would totally do
something
that.
I thought would be interesting to ask him is like, okay, what do you like? Like, what are your influences? When you set out to make a movie, what kind of movie are you trying to make? Because if he's trying to make like a sci-fi hacking action epic, this is a failure on like every single level. But if Neil Breen is like a John Cassavetes guy, he's a guy who likes movies about people in relationships having conversations in a space, then this is still a failure, but it's a different kind of failure. And it would give you, it would give me at least a perspective on like, okay, this is what you're trying to do. I understand where you're coming from and can like relate to your attempt at least to some extent. But the fact that he doesn't really seem to talk about that makes it so difficult to evaluate, like, what kind of a failure is this? Is this a failure that I feel like he has to be in complete denial of, which would be if he was trying to make like Apocalypse Now or something? Or is this a failure that he's willing to ignore the rougher aspects of because he thinks he's gotten his message across, which is a more admirably resilient form of failure, I guess. I'm kind of losing track of myself, but it's so difficult to say what this is meant to be to even determine how bad of a failure it is, I guess is the point.
Yeah. I do have interview comments.
Oh, okay.
On my scene with Breen, please subscribe, giving them credit.
Uh-huh.
Basically This is Victoria Viveros, Jim's wife in the film. Basically, it was her first acting gig. She was a dancer. She wanted to take acting classes. She did. She really loved it a lot. So she just focused on acting training. She said she had already done other auditions. She said she remembered being in the backyard by his pool in the pool chairs, and he gave her sides. I don't know.
Oh, that's like
bad transcription. What is that?
Her she's probably talking about her auditions. Sides are like a bit of the script that you're given, like for like a scene that you're gonna read with somebody.
Okay, and then that was it. And then it took a week, and then she was accepted. She didn't know anything else about it. She said it was really incredible. Neil was a really brilliant person. Then the interviewer immediately asked, so I have to wonder, was any of that intentional? Like the computer or laptop typing on it. And then she says, well, he's an architect. He's really intelligent. and then the interviewer said, well, and she says, but at the same time, he does everything in his film. So when you do everything, things get missed. And then the interviewer is like, oh, I'm not sure. It's like, are you suggesting that some of these are goofs? Could some of these be intentional? She's like, I really don't know. He's a really intelligent person. So you'd think he would have caught those things. I'm not really sure. And that's basically a snippet of that. So I will never know, I guess. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of assuming that she wouldn't just like, oh yeah, it was totally fake and BS. And obviously she looks at it nostalgically. I mean, if it's her first real acting gig, with somebody that, clearly is really passionate about their project and has the potential of having some notoriety or any number of those things. I mean, you wouldn't know any better, I guess, at the time. But I mean, now it's, that was 2024, right? So like, you literally have to be living under a rock. Like the fact you're being interviewed about it, you already know, like at that point.
Yeah.
But the only thing, I still think Neil Breen genuinely believes that this was a serious attempt. I actually believe he's 100% invested in it. And he's hard-headed in that. And if you really feel strongly about something, nobody's ever going to change your mind. And that, I think that's just what the case is with him.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of the actors, I've worked on a lot of student films, a lot of zero budget short films and like documentaries and commercials and stuff like that. And I can attest to actors will say yes to a lot of projects that might seem like they're going to be really bad if there's something in it that they can maybe put on their reel. The whole project doesn't need to be good. It can be a line, it can be a shot, it can be a monologue. If there is something they can put on their reel, a lot of actors will say yes to something. So that does open some windows to the decision to agree to be in this, because for all Neil Breen's failings as a writer, he does write a quote unquote dramatic scene on paper. You flip through a script and you're like, oh my goodness, there's so many arguments in the script between husband and wife about alcohol, about the car, about national and international secrets. There's a lot for me to chew on here. I can understand the decision to say yes to that, I guess.
I made a point of not looking at extrinsic evidence about how aware he may or may not be of the quality of his film. I still just I think it's distantly possible that he was trying his best and being earnest while this was being made. But I feel like at this point, it must have come back around to him that everybody thinks that this is a qualitative disaster. And he either doesn't care or has embraced that. Now I'm drawing assertions on his other films, but I will give him one piece of credit, which may or may not be due him, because it's hard to tell from both the credits as rolled and online. It's hard to find a distinct answer on this, but I do think some of the score in Fateful Findings is kind of good.
You're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
It's horribly timed.
Yes.
But it's good.
And it might be, I think it's very possible that a lot of it is royalty free, like dramatic orchestra, MIDI, garage band, whatever. But he at least credits himself as sound, and then on IMDb he's credited as music director, which might just mean he's like assembling free stuff.
Royalty?
Yeah.
But I think there's at least the possibility that he's like adding in piano things or arranging things. And there were like at least 3 to 5 times while I was watching this movie, and I was like, this music is weirdly good and it's distracting and upsetting me.
You're giving him a lot of credit there. I think music director just means he scrolled through DeWolf music and went, I like that track.
Probably.
And I like that track. And they'll go here, here, and here.
Yeah. I'm probably losing my my
Allie,
Music Man credential by saying that.
Christian's more of a music director than Neil Breen ever will be.
Probably. I'm not even gonna argue that one.
Allie, I was very curious because I was a little bit sus. I was a little bit sus about the daughter.
Oh.
So I had to check.
Yeah.
She was 18
Oh
when this was
my
filmed.
God.
She was
Okay.
18.
All right.
That doesn't make me feel good.
Assuming that it was the year before, I think it was 2013.
Mhm.
Yep.
That was now
18.
here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Maybe I'm making assumptions about Neil Breen. I feel like that was probably more so he didn't have to worry about child labor laws than because of any morality of the scene. Because performers under 18 in most states, you need a different waiver. They can only work certain hours. You can't shoot after, like, you can't shoot at night or after the sun goes down unless you have an additional waiver. They need to have a tutor present on set. So it's a lot easier to get an 18-year-old who looks like a kid than it is to get an actual kid.
They can't take their top off.
It's true, you know. They can't take a bath for Neil Breen, you know, like.
I mean, that's another thing too. We've talked about Fulci on the podcast, and there's definitely a difference.
Yes.
Okay, there's a difference. I will say that, like, to me, it's definitely more off of a gut feeling than like any like actual evidence. But I think that he filmed the female stars like the way that he saw them.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And like you were saying, like with the big breasts and everything, I mean, I don't think he's a prude, is basically what I'm saying. I don't think that he's like this creepy old man that's like specifically hiring women for this specific reason. I do think it definitely played a part in it, but I also don't think that they're like extremely maltreated. Or I think that it's just a very traditional like mindset that he has. I don't think that it was with malintent that he specifically hired them.
Yeah,
is really my point.
I think Neil Breen is probably the kind of polite, old-fashioned man who occasionally makes kind of a creepy comment that gets brushed away because of his age. I don't think he's like, you know, a lecherous fiend or anything, but I'm also going to say that he's probably not the most comfortable person to film a sex scene with.
No. Those were very uncomfortable.
Yes,
and I'm not saying at all he's like normal in any regard. But I did feel like I had to, especially because, you know, the actresses have a lot of screen time and a lot of lines. Probably more than him, maybe.
Maybe.
Oh yeah, another shout out to Jim. Another shout out to Jim.
Yeah.
I think Jim's acting prowess. He really you definitely feel like he was. I didn't even know how to like word it. You could just tell that he's better or has like a better grasp of like remotely what the line, not the script, but the lines we're going for 100%. And he's not believable as a drunk at all, but at least he has like a fraction of a percent of depth.
He's making choices
in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's making choices. Yep. And his mood definitely changes. He has different levels of anger and frustration. Yeah.
I found myself feeling bad for Jim, which is
The character or
yes,
and his car is pretty cool.
his car has the cleanest wing mirrors you've ever seen.
Right.
One other really great bit with Breen that I don't know if we've touched on in Zach's summary is when he's on the phone with the publisher, I guess, of or whoever published his last book and wants to publish his next book. And you can never hear the other line, but he's just like, I never signed a retainer. I owe you nothing. And like 10 more times. And it's like,
no more books. No more books.
I think that was the other laugh moment for me.
Yeah. The whole
but
cast...
you could tell.
No, go ahead, Mitchell.
I was gonna say you can tell that like I'm imagining like reading the script. These are very clearly supposed to be serious scenes.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's pretty obvious. I do not think it is the irony. It is absolutely the irony that makes it funny. Like 100% of the time.
Well,
all right, is it bedtime for Breen?
I'm ready to leave him behind. Yes.
The invite is still open. If he's coming on the podcast, we will talk about this again.
Yes,
that's the
talk about
only occasion
another film
where I would talk about another Breen film.
I'm not even. I mean, and I'm not even like it would be super intriguing to talk. I would like we definitely have to have like questions ahead of time.
Yeah,
because this would be a different conversation.
Oh yes.
Hopefully it doesn't listen to this. But
tell you what, now that we don't have like the prompt to abide by, if Neil Breen gets in touch with you, Mitchell, I would say let him know he can pick whichever movie of his we discuss, whichever movie of his he feels like talking about. It would be a rarity to have something online where you actually get a chance to talk to and pick Neil Breen's brain about anything.
Yeah, 100%. Don't watch this.
All right.
Review.
The week in review. Do you guys know what you're talking about?
I'll just go first. Okay. I'll get it out of the way. Yeah. It'll be a short one. It's a pretty monumental achievement. It's going on the resume. I finished season 8 of Walking Dead. I did it. I accomplished it. It was.
They said it couldn't be done.
I'm out of the frying pan and deep into the Walker fryer. I am in the fryer of season 9. Season 9 and 10 and 11 are highly controversial because the writing apparently gets better. The writing gets better.
Okay.
However, apparently Rick is gone for a long time. And that will be a problem for me because Rick carries the show most of the time. Andrew Lincoln is typecast, by the way. I've tried watching other things he's in. Doesn't work for me. He's 100% typecast. But I'm looking forward to it. Jeffrey Dean Morgan is a great actor, by the way. Also very much carried it. Yeah, I'm really glad that he's getting a lot of roles because I do think he has a lot of range and I really enjoyed him. But man, I'll tell you what, in terms of breaking rules and apocalypses, number one. Any media I've ever consumed, this is crazy. And every time I have new experiences with firearms and then I watch this, it's even worse. It makes me so angry. It is unbelievable. Neil Breen could probably, actually, there was firearms. Neil Breen's handling of firearms in his film is more accurate than season 8.
Oh my goodness.
Not kidding.
Ouch.
Not kidding.
What's the big thing?
There's no ammunition
in season 8?
What?
Because I feel like every season has like this big thing happens. We found this location.
Season 8 is the finale of the 2-season long Savior War with the big group, the saviors. And the saviors save people by killing some of them, threatening to kill the rest of them, and taking half their stuff and half their people to work for them. That is what the saviors do.
I see.
Alexandria is like where they started, but Rick's group are the sympathetic people that only do the right thing, except when they kill a bunch of people that are part of a different group and then aggravate them. Other than that, they take in people. They're nice. They have the light guitar strumming scenes. They have Judith. They have children. The whole thing about this, which is very different than a lot of TV shows, is that the saviors were framed, or at least Negan really was framed as someone who was highly manipulative, but ultimately doing something that was justified in killing some of Rick's group, because Rick's group at the end of season 7 killed a lot of their people. And it was a complete offensive maneuver. They were going out to a satellite station and completely wiping them out because they had heard that they were threatening the Hilltop, which is a whole different community. And they were taking all their stuff and everything. They heard about what the saviors did. So to eliminate the threat preemptively, they went and killed them at the satellite outpost. That is what caused Negan to go on the rampage, or, eventually capture them and kill some of them very brutally. Loved characters. And it Last of Us 2 kind of reminiscent argument almost. Very much so. And this was before Last of Us 2, by the way, when this came out. But same thing where it's like, oh, well, Joel did this one. He killed the wrong person. And now he's got to get murked because he killed the one wrong person, and he's terrible for killing this girl's dad. And she was all very much justified. And now you're going to play as her for half the game. Yeah. So it's just like that stuff. That is what the entire, the savior thing, that's 2 seasons. And it's not 2 seasons of 10 episodes. They're 16 episode seasons. Oof. This is crazy. A crazy amount of time.
Do they even have a zombie thing? Do they do something to the zombies or?
Yeah. So the criticism of the later seasons now is that there's almost no walkers. There are walkers, there's walker scenes, but they're not nearly as much used. It's a human drama at that point, basically. Usually the show's been framed where it's there's human drama, but it's being heavily stifled all the time because people are getting bit. There's, they're trying to figure out how the whole walker thing works, in the early seasons. They all start doing these different things. And it all stems back to season 1, Frank Darabont trying to make the walkers into a progressive, evolving entity. And that never comes into fruition. Now it's there's human drama. There's literal all-out warfare, people that have straight up unlimited ammunition, thousands and thousands of rounds, over the course of 2 seasons, and probably up to 100 guns. You're not actually seen, but that they have that many guns. Just from random places, and just stockpiled with attachments and stuff, and the walkers show up, and people do get bit and stuff still, but it's it's not a main part of the show anymore. And it's when you run out of ideas with that, I got to introduce new characters, and because they've been around just long enough, now you have to kill them. And we can't kill these few characters, because if we kill them like we killed the last one, nobody's going to watch the show, even though the viewership went down half since that decision they made. Now the only thing to do is to make spinoffs. So that's what they did.
Yeah.
And then Norman Reedus, God bless his heart, is not that good of an actor. Let's all agree on that for a second. He's not that good of an actor. Yeah. He's not that good. He does not deserve his own show. He does not deserve his own show. Now, his character is great, and he has some very good moments. In fact, the character is so, not mute necessarily, but he's so soft-spoken. He says a lot through his mannerisms in the show. So he's not a good actor, but he's in a very good role where he can flourish, basically. And that's why people love him so much. And that's why he'll never be killed. So anyway, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to keep going. Mm-hmm. Also, Negan is still alive. Because Jeffrey Dean Morgan is carrying half the show.
Yeah.
And that's all I have to say.
Well, I guess we'll jump from television to, I'll talk about a recent cinema viewing of mine. Now, I go to the cinema a lot, certainly more than I did as a child, but I average maybe like 2 trips a month. I don't go to see things in IMAX very often, though. IMAX is nice, but it's a lot more expensive, and I'm not somebody who's necessarily nuts about the bigger formats. I saw The Invisible Man in IMAX back in like 2020, whenever that came out, the Invisible Man remake, because some friends wanted to see it in that format. I saw One Battle After Another in IMAX because it seemed the closest thing that I could access to VistaVision, which is what the film was actually shot for. And then earlier this week, I saw my third ever thing in IMAX because I went to the 50th anniversary 2-day limited re-release of The Who's Tommy, which was released for 2 days only, a Tuesday and a Wednesday in March in IMAX theaters. And it was in limited IMAX theaters. So I got off from work like 15, 20 minutes early and hucked myself 2 hours north to see this movie in an IMAX theater. And wow. I'm really glad I did. This is a film directed by Ken Russell. And he's a director that I like, but he's a director that I often feel like I haven't really appreciated his movies that much because so much of what I like and expect from a director and a director's style is based on the camera. How do they position the camera? How do they move the camera? Some of my favorite directors like Brian De Palma are basically defined by the way that they move the camera within a space and sort of make the camera and the viewer's perspective another character. Ken Russell is a director who seems to see film almost as an extension of theater, specifically musical theater. So for Ken Russell, his directorial vision is much more in the costumes and the props and the set design than it is in the cinematography. There are some beautiful frames in this movie, but they're rather sort of flat painterly frames. They're not these dynamic dolly shots or moving frames. And so that's the vision that he brings to Tommy, which is probably one of The Who's most iconic albums. The Who, I feel like, are a band that are kind of overlooked. I think that people know the Who, but I feel like they often get lost in the shuffle when compared to like the Beatles and the Rolling Stones. I mean, especially the Beatles. The Beatles, I think, do get all the credit for revolutionizing pop music in the 60s, deservedly, because of the work they did in the studio. But I think people often forget the work that The Who continued to do on tour after the Beatles went into the studio, because The Who were kind of the ones who, I might be emphasizing a little bit, but sort of invented the modern stadium rock concert as we know it. When artists like the Beatles and the Beach Boys were going into the studio and saying, well, we're making this music we think is more complicated than we can perform live, so we're not going to do that anymore. The Who decided, yeah, we're making this more complicated material. Let's figure out a way to perform it live. And so it's acts like The Who and like Pink Floyd that introduced backing tracks and pre-recorded tracks, and they would perform with headphones on so they could hear the pre-recorded track that was being, played to the audience and play according to that. They did some really groundbreaking stuff. They also essentially invented the rock opera with Tommy, which is a concept album about a deaf, dumb, and blind boy who's really good at pinball. That's probably the one song most people know from it. But it's about his experience through life and the way that he interacts with life and all these sort of sham cures his parents try to take him to before he eventually ends up where he does. And Ken Russell adapts that story so bombastically. Ken Russell cranks every decision in this up to 11. The sets are enormous. The costumes are incredibly overblown. So many actors in this who show up to sing a single like bit character song are major actors. Do you want to hear Jack Nicholson sing? Well, you'll hear him sing in this. Elton John is in it. He sings Pinball Wizard, and it's awesome. And he's wearing like 4-foot Doc Marten boots. I'm not exaggerating. Anne Margaret's in it. Oliver Reed. Tina Turner is in it. She sings The Acid Queen. Just an incredible cast. I love the album. Roger Daltrey has an incredible voice, especially during this era. The Who are one of those acts who are still touring, but they're an act I would never go to see, because what the Who are doing now cannot possibly in any way compare to the work they were putting out in the late 60s and early 70s. You watch those recordings and it's like, this is going to sound silly, but for me at least, I get this experience of like, oh my God, this is like watching Jesus give the Sermon on the Mount. This is like an incredible moment in human history. I called the IMAX screening of this movie a religious event, and I wholeheartedly believe that. You get the amazing music of The Who performed in this narrative context, in this incredibly, this genuinely, I mean this in the literal sense, awesome presentation, this enormous screen, incredible actors. I don't know what to say as a negative about it. Incredible movie. Roger Daltrey also plays the lead character in this, and he's great. He's one of the best blind actors I've ever seen, which I would not have expected from the lead singer of The Who. I'm gushing too much at this point, but like, fantastic movie. Probably one of my favorite Ken Russells after The Devils, which it can't quite pass The Devils, but it makes me eager to see more revivals of movies like this in IMAX, because I do think there's some stuff that I, at least from certain directors, have not appreciated when I've watched it at home, that now I wonder, okay, these images, these grand images, if I were to see them on the silver screen, would they give me the impression that they were intended to? And maybe that's the case for Ken Russell. Maybe I got to revisit some Ken Russells on my local IMAX screen. Will that happen? Probably not. They're probably not going to do an IMAX revival of Lair of the White Worm, but you know, I can hope.
I can respect it, and I'm glad that this is at least making you more interested in getting to that big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I don't know what I want to talk about. It's been a while since we've been here.
Oh, we talked for so long, Christian.
I know, dude. I know. I guess I'll just go with the safe Christian tendency of talking about the new release. So I'll talk about Hoppers, the new Pixar movie, which is getting, to me, very surprisingly positive reception on Letterboxd. At least it's got a 3.9 right now, which is quite high, especially now that it's been out for a couple weeks now, I guess. But this was a 2-star movie for me, unfortunately. I saw this with my mom in the Dolby Cinema, so probably didn't need to do that, but the screen was bigger and the sounds were louder. I described this as annoying, unfunny TikTokification of cinema that sort of won me over in the final act. And I think that about covers it. It's got a couple of those sort of signature Pixar heartbreak moments in the middle and towards the end that do kind of genuinely hit you. But much like Onward, I don't know if you guys have seen Onward. Onward has like this very emotional ending, but it's they're both shaking their heads no, by the way. Onward has this very emotional ending, but the movie as a whole is rather underwhelming and full of kind of underbaked Chris Pratt humor and whatnot, that it feels, even though that moment is played pretty well, it just doesn't feel earned. And I felt that way a lot in Hoppers. I thought the lead character in Hoppers was very grating. Her name is Mabel, and she's just kind of like shouts over everyone and ruins all the lives around her, which I guess puts her in the same camp as Marty Supreme, so maybe that's not a disqualifier. I think the bigger issue is that she doesn't really have an arc. She doesn't really change. I guess you might argue that she grows to shout less and ruin people's lives less, but she's pretty much the same character as she is at the beginning of the movie. Turning Red has a similar like kind of cringy tone and very like over the top lead character and I don't know, like meme energy to it. But Turning Red is a really nice character arc that works, even though that movie is too many excesses for me as well. Hoppers is just kind of confused. Basically, Mabel really wants to save this habitat area from being turned into an overpass, a highway overpass. So she's trying to get a beaver to go there because beavers are keystone species. And if just one beaver goes there, every other animal will go there and then they won't be allowed to build there anymore. And probably the best or most interesting character.
Zach made the most confused possible face.
Wait, is that
right
true?
now.
I don't know.
No, that's pretty much the movie, man. And then eventually she finds this technology that lets her transport her consciousness into a beaver robot that it's like Avatar. They make a joke about how it's like Avatar. In
I
like
thought that was
20
the whole
minutes.
movie.
It's most of the movie. I don't know why I'm making it sound like a twist. It's not. But, oh gosh. She meets I'm all over the place now. The mayor Jerry is funny, and I think Pixar thankfully like avoids doing any sort of like obvious Trump mugging or any other like big politician. I don't think Jerry is drawn necessarily to resemble them. Honestly, if I had to pick a current politician, I would think he probably resembles Gavin Newsom the most, to be quite frank, which is interesting coming from Pixar.
It does look a lot like him.
Yeah. But he's this very like chipper, lives with his mom and is determined to build this to get reelected. And he's a funny, enjoyable example of a politician that actually does mean well, as we eventually see, but is like constantly at odds with Mabel. And the sort of moral, I guess, is that not everybody is trying to do the right thing, but wouldn't it be nice if we all were? And maybe we would do better if we all assumed. The message is muddled, man. Mabel befriends this beaver king when she's in beaver form, and he's funny. I think Bobby Moynihan plays him to great effect. But this is also the type of movie where a character repeats themselves after being told, "You can say that again," as a laugh line. So, you know, it's also just crazy. Like it plays very fast. It's edited like at breakneck speed. It's directed by the guy that I think was the showrunner for We Bare Bears. I don't know if you watched that, Mitchell, on Cartoon Network.
I did.
I dabbled with that show and enjoyed it.
That show is definitely not breakneck at all.
It's not. No, you're right. It's very they've got similar anarchic humor, but for whatever reason, this movie is just like, so much. Yeah, I wanted to like this more. I sort of like, I found myself arguing in my head to rate it higher, and to me that was the sign that it probably didn't deserve it, was if I had to make the case to myself. But people seem to like it. People were really down on Elio, the other most recent Pixar film. But I think Elio hits much closer to having like pathos, or having like a story arc that resonates, or I don't know, trying something. Elio's still about like trauma and family drama, but I mean, so is Hopper's, only less successfully. Mabel has like a flashback to a dead grandma, but it's like so transparently like the Pixar device of doing that. It's not really developed the way that like the first 20 minutes of Up or this amazing short film or something like that. It just kind of happens. I've talked about this too long. It's a 2-star movie.
What critical question? The bean mouth art style theory.
Okay. It's mostly gone.
Okay.
That's definitely more of an issue in Elio. It didn't bother me until you pointed this out to me, Mitchell, after I had seen Elio.
Everything went downhill after Luca.
I never noticed it. Mabel doesn't have it. The animals don't have it. I think
Okay.
a couple of the adult characters have it. Jerry might have it, but I don't think he has it. No. But also Mabel looks kind of weird. I don't. This is gonna sound
You got Zach to
really
laugh.
out of pocket, but I think Pixar understandably tries hard to avoid like stereotypical drawings, especially of racial minorities. I know they spent a lot of time, for example, on the design process for Soul. They were very careful about how they drew Joe Gardner and tried to avoid anything that even remotely resembled like a Jim Crow cartoon or something like that. And Mabel being an Asian character, I'm sure they had similar things in mind. But she has like this really crazy hair, and something about the way they animate her face, I think, doesn't lend itself as well to expression, even compared to a Bean Mouth. But it's a movie.
I definitely think that I mean, I 100%, I'm always going to be behind like cultural representation and like really leaning into that, because if you don't, you're just going to make like an amalgamation like character. Anybody can relate to them.
Right.
They're a little weird, a little quirky. They wear different clothes and all that, but there's nothing that like identifies them with their identity. Like they have no identity, essentially, is really what it comes across as. And I feel like the more that they lean into that, like what they did with Soul quite a bit, that makes it a much more like intimate, like valuable kind of Pixar feeling experience in that way.
For sure. For Mabel, it's just like she's a tree hugger, and she was really close with her grandma, who is also a tree hugger, and she's like failing school because she's protesting this highway. That's it.
Every kid's just like
yeah. She's a Gen Z hero for sure, or Gen Alpha, I guess.
All right.
Zach Gen Alpha was like toddlers now.
Oh, I don't know, man. It's a letter of the alphabet.
No, older than that.
Really?
Yeah. My youngest niece is Gen Alpha, and give me a sec.
It's tricky because I think they named the generation retroactively. Like I think they only came up with the Gen Alpha tag a couple of years ago, but it applies to a few years before that.
I want to say it was like 20. Had to have been like 2015 at the latest, probably, is when Gen Z ends.
God, there were children born in 2015. What am I doing with my life?
Yeah, man.
11 years ago. 11! The first quarter of this century is done, Zach.
Oh,
it's done.
My God. Which means more than the first quarter of my life is done.
Oh, crap. With that, is it my turn? I don't know whose turn.
Yeah, let's draw a prompt and get out of here.
It is time to pull the prompt, audience. A Ugandan film.
Okay, we haven't done that one yet.
There is not a very good chance, no offense to the Ugandan people, that this will be 5 stars.
Okay, so I guess the question is, Mitchell, to try to get this minecart roughly back onto the rails before we crash into a wall and end the episode. Are you going for the prompt, or are you gonna mulligan?
Oh, I'm going for the prompt.
Okay.
Name me one Ugandan film, Zach. Name me one Ugandan film. Go.
Oh, Who Killed Captain Alex?
Oh my gosh, what is that?
Oh, I have heard of that one, I think.
Yeah.
I was getting,
if you're looking for great Ugandan cinema, look up Wakaliwood. But, you know, I don't want to pin you down.
Wakaliwood? Like Wakanda?
I don't know where they got their name.
That? We're so done.
All right.
We're gonna get blacklisted.
If you want to hear what Ugandan film Mitchell chose for the next episode, tune in next time.
The game of the game of the game of the game of the game.